Right, welcome to the UK Flooring podcast, gents. So this morning I want to sort of set the scene. I'm at Vebro Polymers in the Northwest. Guys, let's put commercial flooring industry to one side. Who are you? What's your backstory? And what's important to you?
Wow.
Well, big question.
Firstly, just by way of introduction, Mark Verinder. Thanks for having us, Tom. Really appreciate it. I've spent the first 20 odd years of my career basically looking to have some fun. And you'll understand why I kept searching when you listen to my backstory. So I left college and studied law at university with the intention of becoming a barrister. Very quickly realised it wasn't, the fun that you'd imagine, representing criminals and stuff like that. Not learning my lesson, I then took on a training contract to become a chartered accountant. So worked in practice. I'm a qualified chartered accountant. And worked in practice for 6 or 7 years as an auditor. Right. And since then, I realised that the sort of technical side of things wasn't particularly what excited me. And it was the commercial side, taking that financial knowledge, the little bit of legal knowledge that I retained from when I actually turned up at university. Apologies, mother. And I really found myself, as you got more senior in finance, having that ability to really influence businesses. And I ended up working for one of the big four accountancy firms in corporate restructuring. So basically taking businesses that were in difficulty, either being appointed by the bank or even the business owners, going in and trying to restructure those businesses, make them more efficient, turn them around. And that was where I got a real taste for the commercial side of finance. And then sort of over time, sort of progressed and done a number of roles as FD, CFO, worked alongside the CEOs, really learned sort of how you influence cross-functionally. And I think that's where, as an accountant, you can really influence a business. It's not just, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's really understanding how finance can influence other businesses. Took a job as a CFO, working in resin flooring, absolutely loved it. And then a couple of years later, found myself as one of the co-owners of Vebro.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're in the resin, and then you've gone completely on your own, like with a business partner. Is that how?
Yeah. So I've got 3 business partners, albeit a senior leadership team that have been in the industry for years that we sort of heavily rely on. We worked for a big corporate. They went, as a lot of big corporates have done, went through a lot of internal change. They had an active investor. And ultimately, the business that we worked for, we were the leadership team, became a brand within a much bigger group, which works on a big corporate level. Ultimately, they didn't need people to run that brand. It's you don't need a CFO, you don't need a CEO. And we saw an opportunity in the market with Vebro, whereby we could almost take our corporate knowledge and then look at, so you have 2 extremes in our industry. One, the big corporates, where ultimately it's construction chemicals, construction products offering. And the resin flooring tends to sit within that. So within that, you get lots of efficiencies, you scale up. You're obviously on projects whereby you need multiple sectors, multiple brands. However, you then have the other side where you've got most privately owned companies. It's very much just about fulfillment. They can't do the big projects that the big corporates can do. And we saw an ability to really take that sort of big corporate knowledge, but then the entrepreneurial sort of appetite that we had and the expertise that we've got in our industry. I'd always been frustrated, sort of working for other people. That going to bed, trying to second guess other people's decisions. You can do all you can to, influence from your sector, but ultimately someone else was making that ultimate decision. And with the guys that I knew that obviously were becoming available and stuff, we saw an opportunity to bring that expertise, that friendship together. And to be honest with you, I've never slept better since it just started, Vebro, because I go to bed and I know that if anything goes wrong, it's based on me. Thoroughly enjoyed the 5 years since we started Vebro.
I can see the fun part. We'll come back to that. And the same question to you, John.
My story's nowhere near as sexy as Mark. It's more straightforward. But yeah, straight out of uni, went to work for a marketing agency for a couple of years and then moved geographically, so I was looking for another job. In between that, I was doing a little bit of labouring for a liquid roofing business. And then all of a sudden, weirdly, an advert came up for a marketing person within a local and leading supplier of liquid roofing systems. I thought, I'll blag that, had the interview, got the job, quickly moved and had a bit of an obsession with getting into sales once I was in that structure. Moved over to sales in roofing and got into flooring, and I've never looked back. Absolutely love resin flooring and everything about it.
Brilliant. So for the uninitiated, who is Vebro Polymers in a few sentences?
We're an agile specialist resin flooring manufacturer, but also a solutions provider. So we don't just stop at that, making sure, we supply materials on time, materials that are good quality. We actually take those materials and provide solutions, from working from the outset with the architects, end users, main contractors, and also, our contractors, our customer base, but really offering that technical support and the sort of detailed sort of specification side of things as well.
So where are the products manufactured? Where they're stored? What's the overall, from it being manufactured to where's it available? Like what's that process look like?
It might be worth me taking you back a little bit here because, we were a startup, we're over 5 years old now. But we're actually almost the reverse of how most startups come about. Generally with a startup, as you'll well know, is it stems from someone having, inventing something or having a technical knowledge, to manufacture that side of things. Where we found ourselves as a collective, a senior group of experienced people in the industry is we had the commercial understanding, the contacts, and how to take the products to market. What we didn't have was actually the products at the start.
Right.
So, and we made no secret of this to the market. What we did originally in the first 10 months is we found other manufacturers in each. So what we take is we take epoxy, we take PU concrete, we take MMA, we take pump screeds, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a full range of resin flooring products. What we weren't intent on was manufacturing everything ourselves. But what we didn't want to do was ultimately partner with taking other people's brands to market or compete with our suppliers. So for those first 10 months, we selected other manufacturers in each of those chemistry sectors, whether it was a manufacturer from overseas, so they had no presence in the UK, or whether they went to market through different routes. And we partnered with them. So ultimately, we were bringing in incremental business to them. And likewise, they weren't concerned about where we were taking. So it meant that we could negotiate better rates, which meant we could be more competitive. Within 10 months, we had an opportunity to purchase a manufacturing business in Manchester. It was a 35-year-old business, husband and wife, owned by a polymer chemist. It wasn't the most commercially dynamic business. It was very sort of reactive. The products were fabulous, somewhat overly formulated. And they did a lot of private label supply, and they also didn't have a brand. So it was we were a perfect acquirer of them, and they were a perfect business for us. We had our own brand. So it ultimately then meant we could bring in our own in-house manufacturing, leverage off our own brand, and we also bought a business that had turned over certainly for the last 10 years between sort of £1.5 and £2 million. So it gave us a revenue boost as well. And private label relationships that we could really develop and grow. So that gave us a foothold in Manchester. But ultimately, we were knocking two businesses together, and Vebro already being bigger than PR Epoxy Systems that we acquired. So we knew with the manufacturing footprint, we'd quite quickly outgrow that. Hence the move to the fabulous facility where we find ourselves today. We still don't manufacture everything we sell, but nor does anyone in our industry. In fact, we're probably on the higher side. So we manufacture about 70% of what we take to market. A lot of the big corporates, again, and that's down to efficiencies, whether that's, commonalities in raw materials you purchase, or even just not having conflict in production lines and stuff. And most other people, it might be 50%. So we manufacture 70% of what we sell here.
And you've got to remember, we offer a full range of products. Not every manufacturer that manufactures offers MMA, PU, epoxies. So naturally, you're always going to have to outsource some of the production. Otherwise,
most big manufacturers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, certainly other people I've had on the show of, yes, they got 70%, but there's big percentage they don't even want to get involved with it. But
absolutely, yeah.
out there,
and especially when you're dealing with chemicals, that's just the nature of the business.
But it's not efficient. If you're, say we sell a product range, then we sell £1 million a year of it. Our toll manufacturer might be selling 100 million. And there's obviously economies of scale there, and also investment. We're 5 years old. We're privately owned. We're not family owned. We're a family of friends, without sounding corny. And ultimately, to set up, certain plants, you're talking 10, 20 million pound investment. We can invest what money we do have in other things, rather than just being caught up on that. And we have fabulous supply partners, that means that they're geared up. If we need, £100,000 worth of material in a week, they can do that. Whereas if we were doing it on a smaller scale, we just couldn't sort of meet the requirements for our market.
So that, from the initial idea, let's say, was the idea always to acquire something in the UK? Or when you started, were you thinking, we're going to go to the market and find the best? Or did that opportunity just come about? Or was it always on the cards?
No, it was on the cards. We actually, before we even founded Vebro, we were in conversations about acquiring another business, myself and my two business partners. We came to the party quite late in the day on that one. And then actually, the more we stepped back, we were almost buying, a very big and well-established business, and then really having to try and change the culture, the brand, to shape it to what we want. There was nothing cut with it, but ultimately, we wanted to do things in our own way. I said before, whether I'm probably unemployable now, to the rest of the market, so this better work. But from my point of view, we wanted to put our own stamp on it. We've got, a fabulously creative team, in like Rebecca and Lindsay, and we want to leverage off that and really create our own identity. So we took a step back and we said, right, can we do this on our own? And a lot of people think a startup is, you need, millions and millions of pounds of money. What you actually need is a load of balls and a bit of ambition and the right people. Yeah. And actually, one of my really good friends owns a private equity company, and I was chatting to him. They have incubators, so almost like startups where like seeding funds. And he said, mate, just go for it. He said, it's not as difficult if you know your market and you've got the market opportunity. It's not as difficult as you'd imagine. You've almost just got to be brave, find your way into it, and go with the flow. We did know that we needed a manufacturing sort of arm pretty quickly. We'd already spoke to the owners of PR Epoxy even before we went to market with Vebro. We knew that was an option, but we wanted to establish our brand presence first, which we did. So the timing was fabulous. But then we've had other conversations about other acquisitions since, both in the UK and overseas. But we've also grown, which I'm sure we'll come on to, internationally, organically. So it's almost a horses for courses type model. As I alluded to before, I'm a chartered accountant, worked in corporate finance before. I know how to fund deals. I know how to do the M&A side of things. So, and we got a very supportive bank. So there's always opportunities because they back our CV, they back our credibility, our credentials, our history. So there's always that opportunity to do it. And it's always weighing up, what's the right opportunity for this market, that market. And a lot of it comes down to people and the actual market in question. So it was always on our radar that we would have to acquire quite early on. We'll probably still make acquisitions in the future, but a lot of it's done organically as well.
Yeah. And so how long have you been here, John?
I'm relatively new to the business. I've been here 6 months now. Yeah.
And what's in the last 6 months have you seen? Because I'm assuming you guys, 5 years is not like, it's not a historic business, but how?
I think Mark's been quite shy about how he's obviously from.
No one's ever said that before.
he's being modest, but yeah, from someone obviously that's been in the industry for 10 years in resin flooring, looking from the outside in, I was watching that sort of meteoric rise of Vebro, and I always told the guys very jealous, looking at how they market the products, how they approach everything differently, generating some really nice specification work. And I remember when I first got told Vebro were coming into the market, and I almost shunned it and thought there's not really room. And then all of a sudden you see him grow and grow and grow. And I just thought, I want to be a part of that. So weirdly, we actually met via a white label opportunity, me working for another business, potentially making some material for us. I left that meeting, me and Mark were on the emails, and he said, look, there might be a potential. And not even a second thought. Within 5 minutes, I'd emailed him back going, when do we start? How do we get it going?
And without falling foul of poaching people and stuff like that, we had no interest in supplying him private label. We just wanted to. We've been talking about him for a while, and everyone kept saying, best in the business, you won't get him. And we met him, realised that we got on really well. A lot of it comes down to sort of culture as well, an attitude, and he fitted in. Myself and Rebecca met with and we realised that we shared the same energy, the same vision.
That's the other thing you've mentioned, the culture. I mean, you've probably felt it as you've walked in. It's very different to your standard corporate environments. Everyone's on a level. There's a real energy. Everyone works hard, works late, really wants to get it done. And like Mark says, there's people in different departments chipping in everywhere just to make sure that we're pushing and getting to the next level. And all them frustrations that you get working for a larger corporate, which I've experienced for a long time, they're gone because you've got the flexibility. The MDs are involved at every single stage of the business. If you need a price or you need a marketing angle or a quick decision, it's on a wheel and you're there. And it just makes such a difference to a salesperson, a sales team, having Mark and Craig and Rebecca being able to react so quick.
So my question was going to be originally was like, how have you guys grown so quick in such a small time? But by the sound of it, would I be right in thinking it's action, speed, and people?
100%. Yeah, I think you can only be quick if you know what you're talking about. Yeah. And we are experts. I remember listening to an interview with Obama, and he was basically saying he works on, because he has to make decisions quick. When he was president, and he said he works on a probability. If I'm 51% certain, I make a decision. And we do that in a lot of instances where we go, right, well, the hunch is this. But the other bit, and businesses go through cycles, and we're actually in a phase now where we're trying to change how we operate a little bit internally. We were so fortunate in those early years that we had people that we brought in as functional experts, but they were so hungry and bought into this Vebro vision. They'd step outside the swim lanes. I've got a finance manager upstairs who is in the factory. We've got, it's just, these people just want to go over and above. I'm actually we started this year talking about swim lanes now, because we've got to the size where I need, my head of finance focusing on finance. I need, so we go, right, this is amazing. We wouldn't have got to where we are today if it wasn't for these people, this attitude, people getting, Lindsay painting, all these little things that, almost takes people away from the day job, but then they're doing that on top. Let's focus now. We've now got a structure. You find yourself early on where certainly where we were fortunate to find ourselves, it wasn't a lack of opportunity. It was actually a lack of capacity. Right. And now we're going, right, okay, we can afford to bring the people in at the right level. We've now got functional heads to head up all these functions. And that's only function. You've all got a great cross-functional understanding. Let's, have confidence in each other. Let's pass it over. Let's pass it over the right places. And through that, we can actually now deliver more through just being experts in those functions. But it was the people that got us here. And without that, without people at weekends, bank holidays, late nights, we sort of say, we got to where we are in 5 years. The working hours has probably meant it's 10 years because, everyone's, doing sort of 20-hour days, and that's not always sustainable. That's not always, expected. But, people are doing that. I think the guy from Brewdog got himself in a bit of a mess recently talking about work-life balance. Me and John were laughing because we actually support them to an extent. I think it's about work-life integration. I found myself on the few holidays I go on with the family. If, my wife's reading a book or the kids are playing I'll read emails. It's the same thing. But if you enjoy your work, it doesn't always feel like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people, it's mainly people that don't act quick, let's say, and procrastinate in 5 years, did not move forward. Mm-hmm. But what some people don't see is they see the fluffy side of it, I would call it. But what would you say, where it was just an idea to now, what would you have done differently? What didn't work? Because we're talking about what has worked, but I imagine it wasn't plain sailing.
No, it certainly wasn't. We started the business 6 weeks before COVID, before the first lockdown.
Right.
Jesus Christ. At the time, we thought Brexit was going to be the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah.
And actually, bizarrely, COVID really helped us because it almost set a level playing field. A lot of the big organizations, were furloughing people. People were sat at home watching box sets. We had no choice. We had 9 senior people that had all left, good jobs and really committed to this. Right, we've got to, without obviously breaking any of the lockdown rules or anything like that. We were hungry. It gave us a bit of time to get all our literature and everything like that in order and stuff like that. But it was just that hunger. I think as the business has evolved, probably what would I have done differently? I think sometimes we made a call based on previous experience. There were certain times where we almost felt our way into or ploughed into the market going, well, this has worked the same way for the last 10 years. And then more recently, we've gone, well, hang on a sec, we'll do this differently. And I think also we've employed a couple of people in the past based on CVs, whereas actually some of the times in certain roles, you go, well, actually, let's go for attitude, let's go for culture, let's go for personality. All the other stuff we can develop. And I think it's sometimes just really understanding people's motives and getting the right people. And I think we've made a couple of mistakes in that area and a few times. And,
normal.
Yeah, exactly. And we probably let other people down, because we were quite the right company for them as well. You do, without making out that we're a crazy sort of company, we do stuff differently to people. Yeah. We work in a different way, and you need a certain type of person to fit into that.
Question here, John. How coming into a business relatively new, but operating at this high level, mentally, emotionally, professionally, how do you keep up at that higher level? Just personally,
No, it's a good. To be honest, it sounds a bit strange, but it kind of matches my energy, which has been quite nice. I mean, I'm a little bit.
Oh, no, he's only 28.
I know, yeah. The first meeting I had with the sales team here, we recruited. I took one guy with me, Mark Ingram, from my previous job. And we had the meeting, and one of the sales guys went, bloody hell. And Mark goes, yeah, welcome to working for John. And it's just, the energy here matches my energy. And it's all about driving standards, being first, doing what you say you're going to do. And I think sometimes sales overcomplicated. A lot of salespeople just don't do the basics. And I think if you go above and beyond that, over time, naturally, you're going to get some real nice organic growth.
And is there anything you do out of work or even in work that just keeps that fire burning? Again, it doesn't have to be the business is doing that itself, but if someone's lacking that, what would you say to your sales guys or to try and increase the fire to turn the gas up?
No, and I think that's part as running a sales team, part of your job is to continually motivate, isn't it? And I think there's always dips in personnel and what motivates them, and you have to really try and get under the skin in terms of driving them and understanding what drives them. But essentially, the biggest thing for me is never ask someone to do what you won't do yourself. And Mark's is saying, if you work for someone that's continually striving to move forward and putting the hours in and making sure they tick the boxes, naturally that progresses down. And, all the management team here are like that. Everyone else that works around the management team are like that. So very infectious place to work.
No, brilliant. And who are you predominantly having sales conversations with? Who's a great person for you to be sat in front of?
It varies. I mean, we have different facets to the business. So the majority of the role is account management, looking after existing contractors and increasing the contractor network, which is quite a demanding role in terms of it's a very competitive market, finding angles, making sure that everyone's well looked after. But then we've got the other side of the business, which I think for someone that does so well in the contractor market, also does really well in the specification market. So we have a lot of drive to work with surveyors and architects, making sure that we're continually specifying and coming up with angles to sell material that can't get changed further down the line. So we have two real parts of the business. Yeah.
I think the angle bit is really important. That I hate going to meetings without being prepared.
Oh yeah.
What are we going for? What's the purpose? This person's going to give up an hour of their time busy people. Why? What are we going, this whole just going to catch up with a customer. There's a social bit and it's fabulous, but
100%, yeah.
They resent it, so what are we going to tell them? Why are we asking for an hour of their time? And also, just as a supplier, as a manufacturer, what have we got that's different? There is no point us just going, well, we're the same as them, the same as them.
100%.
And they just go, well, why am I going to change, a supplier?
Where's the added value? That's the question.
And that's the bit we always challenge ourselves. What have we got to tell people? What are we doing different? Why are we adding value? And I think, through obviously John, since he's come in, we've got a fabulous specification director in Robert Gray, who's got years and years of experience, really well connected. And he played different roles, different parts. And it's a great blend. And, you already seeing in the 6 months, John and Rob working really close together. And it's that bit of people wanting to help out. We've set up a sales structure in the past. The big taboo's always been about people's bonuses, allocations, from a sales environment. And that's absolutely right. None of us come to work, for nothing. It's, and what we did is it's one pot, if Vebro wins, we all win. And therefore that means that ultimately people aren't, hiding, projects, hiding opportunities, blocking other people from speaking. So basically our customers, the end users, get to speak to the best person for the job, and they use each other, they, bounce off each other.
And also, let's be honest, one person isn't always the right route to market. You might pull on someone else's skills. I often on a job might pull Robert in when I need a bit of support on specification, but Claire's also at the office churning out quotes, making sure she's doing reoccurring calls. So there's no sort of competition within the team. It's all one part. We all drive forward for the same end objective, which is to grow the business.
I noticed, I did a little bit of research, but how does the Vebro sort of partnership work, with the customers? Because again, yes, we're here in business to sell something to someone, but that's the very blunt way. What does a partnership look to you guys? How is that different to, again, someone just buying some product and putting it on the floor? What does that look like to you?
Well, from my perspective, a partner obviously is someone, and this is the key goal to any partnership, is reciprocal business, isn't it? So during an open specification, who's going to put your materials forward and vice versa? From a manufacturer's perspective, who deserves to be put forward for leads, which are gold dust in our industry. It's not, they don't come as easy as you think. So who can you trust? Who's giving you work that you want to reciprocate with? And who's going to win a job, which is the ultimate pure partnership, isn't it?
And the big bit for me is partnerships are great when everything's going well.
Yeah, 100%.
We're giving each other leads and we're winning a big project together and we're all going out, for dinner and stuff like that. We work in an industry where, whether it's environmental, things we encounter problems.
We're not selling prefabricated materials.
Shit happens. And it's about how partnerships for me is about how we address issues together. And, it's about whether it means, if we've made a mistake, if they've made it, we all make mistakes. It's about being fair in commercial decisions, but also then standing together and making sure.
You're spot on, yeah.
We're bringing that complementary.
If you have an issue and you stood with a contractor that you've built trust with and your partners, you say, right, we sort the job out, it gets finished, we'll talk about all the commercial stuff later on. Let's make sure the client's happy. You can't always do that if you don't trust the contractor that you're working with.
I think it's back to exactly the growth thing and the customer service. I think we've got action and speed.
Again, 100%.
Well, I guess just to finalise on the partnership thing, the other bit, and Rebecca, Group Marketing Director, has been intent on from the outset. A lot of other manufacturers, because they're upset, we sell to 150 different, contractors, applicators in the UK alone every year. And a lot of the manufacturers, they'll only promote projects for themselves because they're concerned about upsetting all the customers. We took the decision that all our customers know we can't just sell to one customer. We'd have a very small business. Therefore, we co-promote, we've got that in-house marketing, design with Lindsay, being a graphic designer. And therefore, most of our contractors don't have that option in-house. So we will always make sure we co-promote them without the fear. We're very transparent in that. Yeah, we work with other people. And I think it's been really, really well received by the market because they get to, benefit and leverage on the in-house marketing.
I think it shows a bit of an air of confidence that you're working with partners that you're not really bothered if the market knows you're working with them or not.
I think marketing in general,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't market what they're doing because they're scared of, a lot of projects are multiple phases.
Yeah.
So they don't want to show the first phase because someone else might come in and flip that spec. We took the decision that actually we're brave in our marketing, we're brave in what we do, and therefore we're very open in what we're about to launch, what projects we're working on, who we're working with, in the confidence that ultimately the marketing the benefits from marketing outweighs the risk of other people trolling us, trying to break stuff. And, I think it's a brave approach, but I think it's absolutely the right approach.
I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so many commercial flooring contractors and manufacturers, very few that are in 2025. There are the websites that were done in 1992 and Habitants or the local.
Some don't even have websites.
No, exactly that. And that seems to be in the UK flooring industry as a whole. A lot of this is done with relationships, which is getting them quite far. But the marketing side does seem to lack. And I think
the marketing team and the actual research that goes into everything they do is phenomenal. And even to the point that tone of voice is consistent on every message. The brand is exactly on point on every single piece that we put out. There's nothing, no stone unturned. And you think, working in this, and it's a frustration. I've been in marketing in this industry. How do you make resin flooring sexy? And you look at this brand and you go, wow, they've done it. They've managed to do it. And that was always a hood thing.
It's so important for a company that's 5 years old, and you go back obviously 4 years ago. How are you going to get people to know about you unless you market? So it was a huge. Our growth. We wouldn't have had any success if it wasn't for the marketing team. And you think of the role, we centralize it, our marketing across the whole globe. And they obviously keep the consistency, like John said, for a brand point of view, but it's tailored then for local, for Asia, for Australia, for India, for Europe. It's the question whenever we're talking about putting out a message or who am I talking to, what's my audience, and we'll change that to hit the right note with these people. It's so clever, but I think you can only do that if you have that in-house expertise. Yeah. There's a value in time, particularly if you're relatively small, in outsourcing marketing, because ultimately you get, someone that's a dedicated, graphic designer, someone that's a comms person, etc. But then you'll have attrition on accounts. They won't understand your industry. Nothing's dynamic. We'll have Rebecca or Lindsay, pulling posts, onto social media over the weekend because something's just happened last night. It's so dynamic and engaging, and it, as I said, our business would be Vebro if it wasn't for those two.
How have you done again? Because it's more of a selfish question. In fact, I'm relatively versed on UK marketing, beating a drum, but how, even in 5 years, how have you hit the global market? Because as we kind of alluded to with it, different countries are different, but what's the mindset around that, and how have you suddenly went, right, this needs to be away from the Northwest, this needs to be global? What's that step? And I imagine it's not.
Yeah, so there's a couple of sort of answers to this. I think first and foremost, we had to be quick because ultimately a lot of this stuff is based on, historic relationships, personal relationships and stuff like that. People that have left other companies to start up, and there's a one-time opportunity there, even economically. There's Asia might be flying, India might be flying. India, for example, as I said, we chatted just before we started the podcast. We've done a joint venture with $1 billion stock market listed company there in a market whereby, India's got to rebuild itself, I think 3 times over in the next 30 years. It's growing that quick. They can't even measure the growth. And we're going in with a big player that's already on all the big construction sites. But you've got to that came from an introduction. There's a CEO from a $1 billion Indian company in Amsterdam, really keen to meet you. He's been tracking Vebro. It's an area that they want. A lot of people had just almost dismissed that. And I questioned, before I jumped on a plane to Amsterdam, what's the purpose? What's the opportunity? I had a good think about it. You go, you meet, and you go, right, this is live. This is here now. Let's make this happen. And you change your plans. So I think you've got to be quick. Otherwise, that opportunity will die very quickly. But from a marketing point of view, the question, so Rebecca will come out to Asia with us and I want marketing. And it's like, well, where do your customers hang out? India, the UK, they're huge on LinkedIn. Malaysia, not so much. There's other platforms. They like Facebook, they like WhatsApp, so we'll build a WhatsApp channel. It's about asking the right questions and not just going one size fits all, because it doesn't. It doesn't.
I love that. So one of the things that, again, my knowledge is minimal, but in the commercial industry, sustainability is absolutely essential. You know, specification, architects are all looking for this. And I'm also not a chemist, but I understand epoxies and things are sometimes not going to save the seals. So how have you guys had to do the serious stuff around building, but not building a brand, but building a company in a market that's wanting stuff that's sustainably for the future? You know,
it's a good question. I think like you look at sort of the past decade, and this has been coming, and you kind of, whether you like it or not, and you're trying to avoid it, it's got to the point now where if you want to get specified on a decent sized project with any clout, it's got sustainability requirements for it now. And there's no moving away. I think what you said about epoxies in terms of not being the green material is a little bit unfair, and I think it often gets shoehorned into that like chemical industry, which has a bad reputation. But there's a lot of things in the industry that you look at how it's progressed in terms of green chemistry, low VOCs, recycled packaging from a basic perspective, which have really moved forward. And then you look at it from a holistic perspective in terms of life cycle analysis. When you compare that to other systems, flooring systems outside of resin, and it's actually quite a nice offer and a good sustainable solution. You look at you install a resin floor, for example, the life cycle of that is usually around 10 years, but you can then refresh that material and expand the lifespan. You're also looking at that compared to other materials like soft flooring, which you are well versed on.
Just be careful you don't.
I know, or anyone else. But yeah, it's the refresh purpose, but also everything's made to order, so you've got very limited waste. So there's not a lot of resin flooring which is outside the parameters of your BREEAM and your LEED and everything else.
I think where the challenge, and everyone will see the same, is everyone wants something that's environmentally friendly until it costs more.
That's it.
You know, and that sounds terrible, but you know, it's a way of life. And ultimately, what we have to do is, again, without killing the chemistry, we're a blender. You know, our factory blends materials; it doesn't cook materials, etc. So what we have to do is basically take it all the way back and work with the big raw chemical material suppliers. And we're constantly meeting with them going, right, okay, what else have you got, you know, to replace your raw epoxy? Some of your curing agents, some of your additives, some of your talcs, some of your fillers. And it's working with them and going, right, okay. And then you're doing a margin assessment and going, well, actually, and where we've took the decision, and it's very similar to our actual overall model, is we've very much focused on the top line rather than our margins. Ultimately, the more we sell, the more people are using our materials, the more familiarity they get, the more loyalty they get, and the more the brand gets out there, the more case studies we get. So we took the decision whereby we've almost prioritized the top line rather than necessarily the margin. So if something costs a little bit more, but it gives us an angle to win more work because it's more environmentally friendly, we'll ultimately absorb that margin. And the big bit that we've really tried to do, and we touched on the international side of things, the UK and Europe, legislation. It's, you know, the requirements are a lot higher. You go into some of the other countries in the world, some of the other areas, they're not there. You know, there's red list chemical materials and stuff in there. We actually took the decision, it was one of the things I was telling the Indian market when I was out there, is we're taking European quality products with European standards to the market before it's even required. You know, so we just launched or relaunched our PU concrete in Asia, and it's phthalate free. You know, so we're already taking something out that the market isn't demanding. You know, it's on the overall, you know, red list, but it's not actually being sort of banned. And we're actually doing it first. And there's a cost to that. The actual cost, the BOM, is more expensive. But ultimately, we're doing the right thing. And also, we get a step ahead of other people. So I think that's a key bit. And the other bit, again, from an international point of view, is really understanding where you can obviously we're trying to be a global player, but supply locally. So you're reducing, transporting fillers and sands and stuff. And a lot of the actual aggregates and stuff, they go like terrazzo, for example, it's recycled glass. So there's lots of other things there. But I do think it's a case of almost being proactive, getting ahead of the game, accepting that you're going to have to take a bit of a hit on your margin, and then working with the raw material suppliers to really go, right, what's next, what's coming, and trying to adopt that earlier.
And don't get me wrong, like we also lose business from it as well. You talk about we've removed a certain additive from our PU concrete, which some of the market ask for, and we've said no, we're not going to do it. We'd rather lose the job than put that additive in because we don't want to put anyone at risk. So it's not just about winning business; it's about standing strong with what you believe in and the brand's pushing as well.
I see it slightly in commercial. My expertise is in residential, but in commercial side, I see wood flooring then being VE'd across to LVT. But then if you compare LVT, I think someone told me it's 10,000 or thousands of standard straws you do a drink in one plank LVT. But you've got McDonald's and KFC doing paper straws. Just to be, if you look at maybe the epoxy life of a commercial floor, and it can be overcoated or whatever, but your LVT is going to be lifted and then go to it. So all again, is it price? Is it save the seals? I think there's a lot of it's
and ultimately we've got to have a floor or a solution that serves the purpose. How it's going to be used as well. So there's so many dynamics at play here, but ultimately I think in every instance, the only thing you can do is question. Can we do this in a more environmental way? And really keep challenging yourself as you...
And you are right, that resin flooring versus soft flooring crossover is becoming more and more apparent now as you see resin being used in commercial areas, being specified in commercial areas so much more now. So you're going to keep coming up against that.
Well, that leads on to my next question. 2025, end of 24, what are the trends? What are you seeing? What is leaving on the wagons every week, every month? What's your predictions of what's going on the floor, basically?
So I think we have to look outside our own trends because 5 years in, and the energy we're going at things, we're growing organically every year. There's a huge market share still available for us. So we almost can't look year on year internally because we're naturally just acquiring market share. But I think overall, resin is becoming a lot more understood, a lot more accepted in the market. It's coming into more commercial areas.
That's the big trend, isn't it?
The way we've always looked at things is our competitors are not other manufacturers in our industry. It's actually other markets, and it's really getting out collectively and trying to educate the market. Like I've just joined the board of FERFA, our resin flooring sort of governing body, and the big role for FERFA, people pay their subscriptions for them to go out and market our industry. It's not to market Vebro because Mark sits on the board there. It's to market our industry. And I think, we as manufacturers, we as an industry collectively can really promote that. But I think, we're quite fortunate that we're tracking, and we're obviously, we see all the time European trends because of our just about market, trends in Asia, trends in Australia, trends in the US, trends in India. So we're sort of taking that, sort of different view.
Particularly in Europe, you cross back over to that commercial sector again. Netherlands, Germany, France, resin is everywhere commercially. It's in your hospitals, it's in your schools, and we're kind of like lagging a little bit and catching up, but you can see the specs coming in now in terms of that turning. So that's definitely where I see the growth in this industry.
And we're almost in control of our own destiny because our marketing team, that's a big part of it. They're educating the market, they're approaching end users, there's dedicated, very focused marketing campaigns, at certain sectors, to really almost change, people's perception of other alternatives.
I think that's what I find. I was in Vegas exactly a year to the date now, and I was in an investment bank. It's a talk, and it was the investment bank talking about the flooring industry. They only invested in flooring business in the US, and they said SPC is going to tank, and laminate flooring is going to come back up. And I'm sort of, that's quite an interesting thing. It's really interesting to speak to people on the ground for the last 2 or 3 months. SPC is tanked. People are asking for laminates again, and residential, and that's really, it could be I think it is actually marketing because people have not got on as well as the SPC manufacturers had hoped. So they've gone backwards, well, not backwards, but everyone knows what a laminate floor is. And a few years ago, they didn't know it. Could be the same with, you guys will probably much hope that, our hospitals are all going to be resin. It doesn't.
And I think you're right. I think part of it is our own destiny, because you look at the market now, when lockdown was apparent, and I think it worked great for the business in terms of specifications were there to be broken. Main contractors had, a whole lot more power than they have at the moment. But in terms of specifications now, we're driving them and holding on to them. And I think due to a lot of issues within the market, there's a real need to stick to spec and make sure that if it is switched, it's got to be on performance rather than devaluing a spec. So yeah, if we play it right, I think that the world's our oyster in terms of growing that commercial market.
Yeah, and lead rather than follow.
100%. That's
yeah. Completely off subject, but we're obviously sat here in your new HQ. Again, what was the rationale behind new building? As I think you guys mentioned before the podcast, this room didn't look like this last week.
No.
So again, what's the thought?
It was all done for you.
Yeah. But yeah, where were you before? What's the future? And it kind of leads on to what's next was the question after that. But
the reason for the move, again, multiple reasons. First and foremost, our previous manufacturing facility came with an acquisition. The previous owners also owned the property. We knew we'd very quickly grow out of that. We had a 5 + 5 year lease. We've just bought ourselves out the lease 12 months early. We just hit a bit of a bottleneck whereby it wasn't affecting our fulfillment, but it was making our fulfillment was more inefficient. We were, and the flow, the operational flow from a manufacturing point of view. So there was that element. We really, we've outgrown our previous facility. And again, possibly a little bit harshly, we didn't believe that the facility, it was a series of 5 big units. It wasn't the big, attractive sort of building and, new build that we'd like to present we didn't think it presented our brand in the right way. So we almost shied a little bit away from having meetings on site. And then there's an element of, comfort for our staff. As I said before, we've got a fabulous team of people here. And, you can see here, we've got beautiful offices, air conditioning in the summer, it felt, more appropriate, more reflective of the brand. And then the other bit we wanted to add was we want to really facilitate new entrants into the market. We're a young, hungry company. We want to think about, who's going to be the big players in 5 years, 10 years. And that a lot of the time that starts with the apprentices, or people even that are working almost in a slightly, they might be working in roofing or something, but they see opportunities all the time on the same projects for flooring and they're interested. So we've opened a training centre here as well, to facilitate that. As I alluded to before, tying in with Further to be able to host some of their training programs for their apprentices and stuff. So there's lots of reasons.
I think the other thing is it's a signal of intent for the UK. I think there's a slight perception that Mark and Rebecca are doing so well in terms of growing the foreign market that there's been a lack of focus, but it's just not the case. You look around and see what they've invested in UK-wise and how they want to grow this part of the business. It's just obvious, isn't it?
I love that. In tradition UK Flooring podcast style, I've got some slightly more intimate questions, just for a bit of fun for you guys.
It's where I've got to know when to stop.
I'll go one each. Start with you, John. What's your favourite floor covering and why? But what do you also have at home?
That's a really good question. That favourite floor covering. I'm going to be really boring here and go with a high build coating because it serves a purpose. And I know why you're getting at with that question, because someone always says to me, if you had to have a resin in your house, which resin would you have?
I was going to ask, is your garage floor got resin on?
My garage floor's got resin on.
Right.
But more importantly, I would, if the opportunity arose and I had a concrete floor, I would without a doubt substrate, which I don't. I would stick a terrazzo in my house, definitely just for lifespan, aesthetics. Yeah, beautiful system.
I'm actually going to know the same question just to be nosy. at home?
So at home, my driveway in the front of my house is all tarmac waiting for resin bound. And yeah, so it's all prepared, it's all ready to go. Again, houses and styles and fashions go through cycles. However, from a resin bound point of view, there's obviously other benefits. You go back a few years ago with the block paving.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried jet washing it? Bloody block paving to get all the weeds out? I tend to get my mum, who's in her 70s now. She's got goggles on, covered in mud. It's not a pleasant, and so there's a lot of practical side to things in that respect. But yeah, I love the resin bound finish from a driveway. It gives that grand, almost stone sort of finish that you had historically. Again, going back to what John said, the terrazzo, I think anyone would be daft to overlook that. It's a skill. The application of that is a real skill.
The driveway. Have you chose the colour, or is it left over off a job?
No. I'm waiting for a job in the colour I
want. If I gave you £1,000 now, we're at lunchtime, but you've got till 5 o'clock to spend it, what would you spend it on?
Vebro shares. Yeah. One way up.
Again, we try. So we don't take any money out of this business. It's all about building something for the future. So there's so many different opportunities that I would put that money back into in the business. But unfortunately, it wouldn't go on myself. It'd go on the business.
Brilliant. If you could change your profession today outside of the flooring industry entirely, what would it be?
I get asked this a lot, weirdly, but I would definitely stay within construction. I think it's the best industry to work in for a number of reasons. But yeah, given previous experience, I'd stay in construction and move over to roofing. Yeah.
Don't go. I think I already told you I've obviously chased fun for a number of years. I absolutely, my job now as the CEO of Vebro, no day's the same, so I almost get that fix of doing everything. We just run a business, so it's almost, it doesn't really matter. And I remember listening to an interview about, I'm a big Liverpool fan, and Jurgen Klopp, what a guy. But they were actually saying you could almost put Jurgen Klopp in as the CEO of any company, because it's about a skill set, a leadership, a vision, an energy, how you motivate people and stuff like that. And I don't see, I've long since accepted I'm not going to be a footballer. And I don't see the need to change profession. I honestly don't. At times the weekends get in the way of work. It sounds horrendous.
It does mean that as well. And I thought you'd got through a whole meeting then or interview without bringing Liverpool into it. I'm not every meeting. I just started. If you want to devise people in a meeting, just bring Mark with you to talk about Liverpool for a little
bit. Which leads quite well onto that, Mark. What is one thing your least favourite part of being CEO? One thing.
This is difficult because I don't know if I'm going to offend here. To be honest with you, sometimes it's just having to be brutal on your time. It's so easy to be involved in everything, and you have to accept that other people are actually better than you at certain things. I think the CEO of Gymshark, I think it was Ben Francis. I think when he started Gymshark, and he just went off the scale, he actually demoted himself. Yeah, he realised he wasn't capable of being the CEO of a business at his age, with his and he put someone above. He actually took time going to work in marketing, different functions. And I think having that appreciation and that understanding that you're not the best at everything, it'd be wrong if you were the best at everything. But I think that's the bit that I struggle the most with, not being involved in everything. And there's a few people within our business that would advise I don't do that very well.
And John, what's your least favourite part, let's say, of sales?
I think, weirdly, again, spoke about this week with the team, because it can be easy to get demotivated in sales sometimes, but the most difficult thing in sales is that output doesn't always equal sales or results. And it can be driven by market or competition. It doesn't necessarily reflect what the team are doing. So it's just like trying to keep people motivated and drumming in the fact that if you keep doing the right thing, eventually the tide will turn and the results will come in. So,
and there is a balance, particularly when you're a young company, between immediate sales and that pipeline in the medium term.
Long term.
And trying to do both, and make sure that people understand you're doing both, I think is a constant sort of worry for challenge for our sales team.
And with sales, you just never switch off. That's the thing. You don't finish at 5 o'clock and turn your phone off and that's it. It's just 24/7, isn't it? So that's the difficult part. But I suppose that's with any part of the business.
Yeah. John, what's the number one sales question if you only had one question?
Well, that's really good, that.
Can I go first?
What are your pains?
How can I help?
Same question in a different format here.
We were talking before about going to meetings and really going with a purpose, going to offer something. But sometimes people get that wrong as well. You go determined, I'm going to tell you this regardless. Actually listen to what your customers need and being able to react. Rebecca, mentioned on them before, our group marketing and business development director, is absolutely brilliant at this, particularly from an international point of view. We'll sit in meetings and she's not always the most vocal. And we leave, and as soon as you get in the car, get on the plane, get back to the hotel, this is what they want. And she tailors stuff. And it's being agile to know, to sell. Not everyone wants to buy the same thing. You can't sell lock, stock and barrel everything to everyone. There's an opportunity where someone might just have a gap. They might be really, really delighted with a certain supplier and a certain product type. You're not going to break that. So stop banging your head against that. Stop wasting their time, frustrating them, and see where the opportunity and see what they need, and where you can bring some value to them.
No, and Mark, how are you brutal with your time? How do you manage that?
Not too well. I forgo sleep a lot. Not fabulous. It's getting a lot better because I've got such a good team around me now. With Rob, with John, with Rebecca, we've got fabulous people that just sort of step up all the time. And I've got to listen to people where they go, Mark, you don't need to be involved in this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that was one of the big things that when I got a great team, and it's finding people that say no to me.
Yeah.
I don't need many yes people. I need some yes people.
Oh, I've got good at that.
But it was really weird, sort of 10 years ago, if people have been saying no, I actually got like a block with it. And the more people I've got no, and very similarly, we made my wife CEO of our business, and I took a reverse role. And that was the thing I wish I'd done much sooner.
One thing I will compliment about Matt, he does listen. That's the thing. I mean, we've gone through a whole process of how can we improve from a fresh perspective in the business. And to be fair, he's taken it all on board. And every single day, we never just say, that's it, we're good. We don't need to improve on anything. It's constantly, where can we improve? And that's how you grow and get better.
Was that always the case, Mark? Was it like, when you're in corporate, was it Mark for the highway, or have you? Or that always been the same?
No, there's only John that never said I'm never emphasised it. I think again, without blowing smoke up John's arse, we again 5 years in, we knew we were very good at certain things. We knew we weren't as good as we wanted to be at other things. What John's done is come in and not just leveraged and jumped on the good stuff and went, right, well, it's easier to grow from that point. He's actually gone, well, I know that's going to keep going. Right, where can we improve? And he's gone round market feedback, and we're never going to be perfect. I don't want, if we were perfect, we were the size we are, I go, well, where do we go from here? So John coming back and challenging the business and going, right, this is a new opportunity. It's brilliant. What I keep saying to John is every time you raise an area of improvement, it's brilliant for us because I know that tomorrow, in a week's time, in a month's time, we can address that and the business is going to be better. Whereas if we just accepted that everything was okay, good, or it didn't matter, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, love that. John, 3 people you'd like to have a pint with, dead or alive, tonight?
Oh, that's a really tough one, isn't it?
Anyone at all?
3 people.
Yeah.
I'll go Donald Trump.
Yeah, good table so far.
Jose Mourinho. And Ricky Gervais. I think that'd be a nice tardy dinner table, that.
And what about you, man?
I just want to go on John's team. If I can swap Mourinho for Klopp, I think, Klopp is just engaging. He's so charismatic. And I think everyone always leans to a politician because there's so much you'd like to find out about what's gone behind them. And, for me, I love Boris. Again, that's possibly not going to make me too popular on the back of this, but the stuff he's gone through, he had one of the most challenging reigns, in sort of recent memory. And I actually think the way he presents himself and goes about it is very considered. There's a lot to it. I'd love to get sort of under his skin there. And yeah, the third person, I'd invite John.
But no, he's same with Trump, isn't it? You look at him and he's Marmite, but if he makes a decision, he sticks by it, and that's the end of it. Yeah, get shit done.
I think that's one thing from Trump and Boris, irrelevant to their political views, because I've not my level of expertise, but how they operate when they're all getting out of bed and they're all going to bed. How are they operating at that level and keeping focused? That's a skill set, no matter what their opinion is. But to make them decisions and move quick, I think it's a massive skill to have. So it's with Boris, with lockdown, it's like, I'm just going on the telly again to tell everyone. It's that in itself, no matter what he's saying, is huge. I think anyone would struggle with that. We
talked about listening. These people, they're not experts in, defence, in economics, in health care and stuff like that. They have experts, and they are basically just briefed. They take all the information together, they have the wider overview, put it together, and they make a decision. Or they front it up. A lot of the time, they're an actor, they're on the front, they're presenting something. But yeah, I think it's, there's so much to learn behind that and observe from it. As John was laughing before, a lot of our sales meetings, I will come in and I'll be, basically stealing something from, Arne Slot's interview before, from a Friday. One of the things he took over from Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp gave Liverpool one of the most successful periods in a long time. Arne Slot wasn't a household name. They employed someone that basically wouldn't take all the assets and rip them up and start again, like United do every 18 months. They basically said, right, how do we maximize the assets we've got? Who's the best fit for this? But he had to tread so carefully because they had an absolute legend there that was miles more qualified than it was take. So he had to deal with it. And they said, how are you going to improve? And he said, well, Liverpool, what Klopp did, were outstanding 8 times out of 10. I want consistency. If that's in there, I want it 10 times out of 10. And we say it from Vebro, whether that's, from dispatching, production, mixing, whether it's how we present ourselves in meetings, whether it's the service we give, 10 times out of 10, let's go for that consistency.
So this coming at the end of the podcast, John, if there's someone in the flooring industry is listening to this podcast and think, I want to be involved in this. So with the training, becoming a customer, or just being nosy, want to do some business with you, what's the way to get involved with that? How do they do that? How do they get in touch with you, the team? What's the buying?
Yeah, I guess so.
Is it bought from yourselves? Is it in distribution? Just give us the...
Everything is direct. We're a direct business. So yeah, very easy to get in touch. Click on the website, hello@vebropolymers.com, and that'll put you in touch with, that'll put you in touch with anyone you need to speak to. But yeah, look, we're all hands on. An inquiry comes in, it gets fielded out pretty quick.
I think that's the best bit. We get inquiries from all over the world. And we never dismiss an inquiry. We always ask the right questions. We're very quick on going back to it. At times we will say to people, really sorry we can't help you. Whether it's a reason that's too low cost, or we don't have the exact product range, or they've misunderstood our market. But we will always give people the courtesy, the time to understand what their needs are, to see if we can help. And we'll assess every inquiry, every bit of interest on its own merits.
From a sales perspective, that is really annoying when people, you will get an inquiry might be a patch repair of 3 or 4 square meters. Oh no, I don't do small jobs. And you're like, yeah, but if you looked at the client, if you looked at the revenue of the client, the further opportunities, you should never ever turn away any opportunity that comes in through an inquiry.
No, I think another commercial contractor said on the podcast, there's no such thing as a bad job, just a bad price.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it.
Give us a little bit on the training side, because obviously we're Cockerill & Co's a training provider as well. So if someone wants to get involved in the training or know about the product, what can they come here to do, or what's in the future this year? What's available to people?
Well, we've got standardised training schemes for all of our product range, but as and when, if we get bespoke training needs for certain materials or technologies, then we're happy to kind of provide bespoke training sessions too. But I think training academies just opened and we've got 9 sessions booked in now between now and the end of Feb. So it's going to be busy.
And I think what we're trying to do, and again, there's a bit of an investment on this, which, John's been banging at me for a while, is we're not just hosting training sessions based on a project opportunity.
No.
It's not just to give a reference point, a sample to win a job. It's very much to facilitate the growth of our industry.
A lot of those training sessions booked in are existing customers, but we're training their estimators or anyone else involved in the business to try and add value that way as well.
I think this is something we learned really early on, is that a lot of people that drive decisions which manufacturer or whose material to use is the actual people laying the floor. It might not be the owner who no longer is, on site laying the floor, because it's all about application, ease of application, enjoyment of laying the floor, or just feeling like they're listened to, they play a part in that decision making. So it's really sort of we have obviously the relationships with the people that ultimately place the order, pay the checks, but it's really getting the confidence and the relationship with the people that are laying the floors.
I think that's the biggest thing, where many businesses employ sales, business development managers, etc. But I also think the person that's buying the material, buying the flooring, has a level of due diligence. So if you think, right, I'm going to swap supplier, that's great for, let's say, a business development thing. But I go back to the owners and say, have you done real due diligence on that company? Why not go and get in the car, spend a day with them? If it's a great fit, it's a relationship you're going to have for many years. But don't just expect, it obviously relieves the business cycle of it, but I'm advising that to everyone, because it just makes more sense.
If you've got an owner-managed business and they decide that they're going to change that material, the impact on that person goes far beyond the order, because you've then got the guys on site laying it. His phone's not going to stop ringing if that material's not right. And ultimately, he made the decision. So it's changing that habit is more difficult than just, there's a good price, mate.
And also with the training, I see it as a two-way thing here, in as much as it's absolutely invaluable feedback for us. I think sometimes, people shy away from feedback because the worst thing you can do is ask for feedback and do nothing about it. If you're going to be brave enough to ask it, you've got to stand behind this. Doing the training days, you're actually getting, market intelligence. People go, well, actually, you could tweak this a little bit, and I challenge our business every day to be better today than we were yesterday, next week than we were last week, next month than we were the month before. Having people in that are actually, using materials, from multiple suppliers all over the world. And they go, well, actually, I like that bit, but one of your competitors, does this a little. And they go, why don't you have that? We've got our technical people observing this, and their job then is to take that feedback. So it's not just pushing, the sale. It's actually getting feedback from our ongoing research and development.
No, I love that. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending the time. Thank you for inviting me here.
No, it really did. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, Tom.